Good afternoon. I'm Julie Menon, and I'm chairperson of Community Board 1. And let me first of all welcome all of you here today, and thank you so much for being here. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Congressman Jerry Nadler, Controller John Liu, State Senator Daniel Squadron. We'll soon be joined by Chief of Staff to Shelley Silver, Judy Rapfogel, as well as Council Member Margaret Chin. And this event absolutely couldn't be possible without our fantastic co-sponsor, the Battery Conservancy, headed by the wonderful Rory Price, and its chairperson, Bill Rudin, who I understand will be joining us shortly. I also want to acknowledge a couple other special guests we have here with us today. Liz Berger, President of the Downtown Alliance. Rochelle Friedman, Head of J&R. Tony Perez, President of BMCC. John Hayworth, President of the Museum of the American Indian. Eric Botcher from Governor Cuomo's office, Jeff Menkes, who is CEO and President of Downtown Hospital, Catherine McVeigh-Hughes, the Vice Chair of Community Board 1, and the many Community Board 1 members. Please just raise your hand. We've got a lot of Community Board 1 folks here today, and I want to thank and congratulate them. This past Saturday at 8:46 a.m., we had over 5,000 people link hands right down here, starting in a chain from Battery Park, going through the Battery and through Tribeca, and it was really a tremendous showing of resilience of our community. Now here we are on the day after the 10-year anniversary. Yesterday I was honored to be at the memorial service. I really want to congratulate the mayor on a beautiful and really fitting tribute for the family members. Obviously their memories will stay with us forever. But now, the day after the 10-year anniversary, is a day that our Lower Manhattan community looks towards its next chapter of recovery and of renewal. Our neighborhood, quite frankly, has a long history of perseverance. In fact, terrorist attacks have occurred in Lower Manhattan, unfortunately for many years, actually dating back to 1920, when a horse-drawn carriage was detonated on Wall Street. We are, of course, the only neighborhood that has been attacked twice by terrorists in the past 20 years, but the history of Lower Manhattan is one of resilience. The terror attacks on September 11th blasted a 16-acre hole through the heart of our neighborhood and countlessly took so many thousands of lives, so many thousands of jobs, and wreaked $83 billion of economic damage on the city of New York. But it did not wreck our spirit. In Lower Manhattan, we are a community of survivors. Today, with the extraordinary investment of the city, state, and federal government, we are once again a neighborhood that is, quite frankly, thriving. We're the fastest growing residential neighborhood. And I do just want to point out, in the days and weeks after 9/11, and so many of you were here, if I had a nickel for every single time someone told me that people will never live downtown again, they're not going to want to work downtown, and they're certainly not going to want to visit downtown, it would be a very large jar of nickels. Because, yes, we are the fastest growing residential neighborhood with 30,000 new residents since 9/11, but we're also the fourth largest commercial business district in the country. And now that the 9/11 memorial is open to the public, today being, of course, the first day, we expect to have between 5 and 7 million visitors come each and every year. We've built several new public schools downtown, PS 397, which opened last week, PS 276, a couple blocks north of here. We've opened 2 new community centers, 3 new playgrounds, many new parks, a new public library branch, a new ball field, and many other amenities. Our success is due, in my opinion, in large measure to the dedication and perseverance of the people who live and work here, and that is why we're here today, to basically acknowledge that and say thank you to them. The tree we plant today, and it's right over there in that park, is a sturdy and resilient pin oak tree. And I want to say it's a pin oak tree. I first read it and thought it was pine, but it is a pin oak tree. And it represents our community's hope for the future and triumph over loss. This type of oak tree is known actually as a survivor tree, in that it can withstand storms and it can withstand a lot of damage in tough weather. And I think that's really emblematic of what our community has gone through over the last 10 years. It's our hope that people will come to this tree, be able to reflect, be able to remember the lives that were lost, but also look towards the future. Obviously, the tree will go through the 4 seasons, and you'll see it in the spring and summer and fall and winter, and you'll see it weather many, many storms and all that affects our Lower Manhattan neighborhood. Before we hear from Mayor Bloomberg and Congressman Nadler and the Controller and the many other elected officials we have here today, we are actually going to go over and dedicate the tree first. We have shovels there, and then we're going to come back and hear from our elected officials. I'd like to ask members of Community Board 1 to please join me over there.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Well done.
So it's now my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of New York, Mayor Michael Bloomberg. As I said earlier, I really want to thank the Mayor for everything he's done, particularly with regard to the memorial. I was at the service yesterday. It was one of the most moving services I've ever been to, and he has done really an outstanding job as chair of the Memorial Foundation Board in making sure that this memorial is a reality. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Bloomberg.
Well, Julie, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll take full credit, not for the memorial, that was done by an awful lot of people, but I'll take full credit for the weather today, because nobody can prove whether it was, seems easy. In the Jewish culture, one of the most meaningful things that you can do for someone who has passed away is to plant a tree in their name. Trees are a reminder that life renews itself, and therefore the custom. For every death there is a birth, even in tragedy there can be hope. And so it's fitting, I think, that we plant this oak tree in the Battery, not just to honor our city's darkest day, but to embody our greatest hopes for the future. It goes without saying that 9/11 was a cataclysmic moment for New York, and especially for Lower Manhattan. A shroud of dust and grief and uncertainty hung over this neighborhood for months on end. Many residents were forced from their homes. Many businesses were forced to close shop, and that left many to wonder if Lower Manhattan could ever recover. And Julie so eloquently talked about that. But the terrorists who sought our demise, I think, underestimated the resilience of New Yorkers. They didn't predict that in the depth of our sorrow we would all come together, and from this unity would come some incredible strength. We envisioned a new lower Manhattan, one that would be more vibrant, more dynamic, and more full of life than ever before. And working closely with the community, we've taken the steps to make this vision come true. We've invested $260 million in parks. We've spent $165 million annoying everybody, but reconstructing streets, and 127 building new water mains. I'm sorry for the inconvenience for everybody, but it does give us the infrastructure to go on for decades from now. We've created some 4,000 new school seats, and those investments have paid off, I think, in a very big way. There are now more businesses operating in Lower Manhattan than there were on September 10th, 2001, and what's especially encouraging is a majority of them are not in finance. They are in other industries, so we will have the security of diversity going forward, where if one industry goes through some tough times, it doesn't destroy our whole economy. There are more people living in this neighborhood than any time since 1920. Just think about that, double the number now that we're living here on 9/11. And the redevelopment of the World Trade Center site is accelerating. Amid the new office towers that are rising, we've already planted 225 trees in the Memorial Plaza that stand like the tree we just planted as a symbol of renewal. And in fact, today I was there this morning with John Liu, and we were shaking hands with the first people that came through the gates, the first people who had tickets to come there. Chit-chatted. They came from all over the world, or at least all over the United States. And Seattle and Houston, I think, were the farthest cities I talked to people. Hi, Judy. I don't know who else. Corpus Christi. That's near Houston. Close, you know. But I think that the outpouring yesterday, that when they looked at the memorial and they looked at the names, somebody asked me what I thought of the memorial, and I said, you know, if they had a statue, it would graphically represent something. But somehow or other, when I see a statue of somebody, I don't stop to think, who are they, and what were their aspirations, and what about their family, and who's taking care of them now. And yet when I see names, just like you see the names in the Vietnam War Memorial that Maya Lin built in Washington, it gets you to think. And it gets you to understand that we have an obligation. The people who died back on September 11th, 2001, well, almost all of them were working for a living. They were there that day working to support their families, to have a better life for their kids and their siblings and spouses and parents and companions and whatever. And they can't be here anymore to do that. So it's up to us, I think, to make sure that we do our part so that their those they left behind will have a better life, the same kind of better life that the deceased were working towards. And they're not going to be forgotten, the deceased, but if you ask them, if you could ask them, what would you want? I think it's hard to imagine that it's not a better life for those I left behind, and that means better schools and jobs and safe streets and art, culture. So I think we're doing the right thing here. This morning really was an inspirational moment because I think it was another affirmation that life has finally returned to the site, and it's returned in full force. There are many people responsible for Lower Manhattan's revival, including elected officials like Congressman Nadler. Jerry, if you think for 1 second we don't need more money from Washington, you're wrong. We will certainly work you over. Judy is here to represent Speaker Silver. You can tell him that we have not forgotten, and when he thinks about the Assembly, it's really you should think about the New York City delegation more than anything. State Senator Squadron, Councilwoman Chin, and Comptroller Liu, who all have fought to deliver the support that this neighborhood has needed. And, of course, many others who deserve credit, too. You know, this neighborhood is fortunate to really have people who care and are activists in the ways that we all need. Not just sit around and complain, but try to make it better. And I think that's one of the reasons that the downtown came back so far. Worry Price, who I have always been a fan of, and Julie Menon, who I got to know after 9/11, and she has never stopped working very hard for everybody down here. And finally, we have to recognize the everyday New Yorkers who never lost faith, who never gave in to the fear, and who in countless different ways sowed the seeds of renewal in Lower Manhattan. Because of their efforts and because of your efforts, Lower Manhattan's best days are still to come. But that does not mean that our work is done. Judy Rapvogel is going to go back and tell her boss they need more, right? All kidding aside, we have to continue to invest in the future and do everything we can to nurture this revival so that its roots take hold and this tree continues to grow stronger, and so does the neighborhood surrounding it. It's a nice symbol, the tree, and it's there to remind us that you know, there is life after tragedy, and we have an obligation to make sure that life is better for those still living and those still to come. So thank you all very much. Great job.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's now my pleasure to introduce someone who has represented this community since before 9/11, and without whom so many of the amenities that we have downtown would not be possible without the federal government stepping in and bringing dollars to our community, and that's Congressman Jerry Nadler. And I also want to give him a special thanks for all the work he did in making sure the 9/11 health bill passed, since so many residents down here have had health effects, and it's been so important, your leadership.